Strap yourselves in. We're talking about failure today. Welcome to the Knitted by Whitney YouTube channel. This is episode 20. We have hit the 20s, and maybe it's appropriate that I have this super cute, what I'm calling flapper dapper hair today. I just got back from getting my hair cut, and whenever I get my hair done, my stylist always curls it for me. Although, there's not a huge length to curl. And my hair is usually straight as a pin, so she's the only one that can ever get any curls out of it, and this is as much as I can get. I can get waves, and then I sleep on it, and they're gone. In fact, I just think about it, and they're gone. My hair really can't hold curl at all. But we're not here to talk about my hair today. We're here to talk about my knitting projects. And I don't have any finished objects to share with you because I am sharing a failed project. And I'm going to get straight into that and we'll hash it all out. But after that, I have some fun whips to share with you and some plans that I'm going to be working on, a couple yarns to share with you for my stash spotlight, and then I have a few books to share with you in my book review. And if you have been following me on Instagram, we've got some thoughts. So it's going to be quite an interesting episode this time, I think. And let's get right into it and let's start talking about failure. So my failed project is my a la Reine blouse test knit. And I wanted this one to work out. I really, really did. But it just didn't. I'm going to include some photos here of what it looks like on me, showing some of the challenges and the fit issues that I had with it because I'm sitting down now. I can show the sleeve from this angle, but you don't really get a full view of the top. I can't even stand up because of where I have the camera in relation to me, but we're going to talk this through, and I'm going to have some pictures on the screen to show you what this top looks like on me from head to toe. Speaking of head to toe, this is a bottom-up pattern, and I did not know that when I signed up to test knit it. That is my own fault for not doing my due diligence and doing my research and actually reading what it said. So if you haven't heard of it, this is the a la Reine blouse. I'll put a picture right here. It is already released in sizes extra small to extra large. And the designer has started expanding her size range. The designer is Made in Knitwear, and I'm thrilled that she is starting to include more sizes, and she is becoming size inclusive. And her a la Reine blouse was one that she started to add new sizes after the pattern was already released, and she needed those sizes to be tested. Since then, she has also done the Melusine top, I think, and that one was tested with the expanded sizing range, I think. Now, based on what I saw on Instagram, I didn't see any plus size tester photos, so I cannot confirm that without checking it, and I record on my phone, so I cannot check it at this moment. But if anything I said was incorrect, I'll put it on the screen, of course. So she needed to test knit some of her expanded sizes for the à la reine blouse, which is inspired by Marie Antoinette and her portrait, which was her in, it was technically a dress, but based on what it looked like undergarments of the time. It at the time was a very scandalous portrait. It is a beautiful portrait, and I have actually seen a recreation of that dress. There used to be a show, I think you can watch it on YouTube. If you can, I will link it below. I think it was called Dressed in Time, or A Stitch in Time, or something like that. And it was this fashion historian, Amanda Butchart, who worked with historical sewists to recreate costumes that were in portraits. And Marie Antoinette's dress was one of the ones that they created. So if I can find the video, I will link it below. But it's an absolutely stunning dress. And to our modern eye, there is nothing scandalous about it. It is just a puffy-sleeved white dress. But at the time, it was quite scandalous because it looked like undergarments. And it was thinner than the dresses of the time. I digress. This top is inspired by that dress. And I loved it. I love the look of this sample photo of the blouse. And I wanted to make it in order to wear as part of a cosplay that I'm going to wear in early November, I think, for my city's local Comic-Con event. And I thought it would be super, super fun to have made part of my costume. I mentioned it in my Vlogmas episodes when I was working with this idea, because yes, I have been working on this since early December. I once knitted chainmail for a costume that I wore at HalCon, and I was super excited to wear that. It made me feel so good about my costume, and I wanted to recreate that feeling by knitting part of my costume that I'm going to wear this year, because I'm going to cosplay as Jacqueline from Ever After. And I thought it'd be so fun to knit this blouse, and I bought an overdress to put over it, and I just thought it would be such a great outfit. However, the test did not work out. So I started testing this in early December, and I had ordered some yarn from Knit Picks for it, and unfortunately that yarn did not meet gauge, so I had to pause and wait for more yarn to arrive. I ordered some yarn from Hobbii, so that is the yarn that I ended up using. The main fabric is made using Hobbii Extra Fine Merino, and the sleeves and the ruffle are made using Hobbii Friends Kid Silk. Both of them are in the color white, and a really fun thing about the Hobbii Friends collection is if you need to match colors across different types of yarn, you can do that because they have the whole range of colors in a variety of yarns. So there is the Extra Fine Merino, there's the Kid Silk, there's some cotton, of course there's also some acrylic, and there's just a wide variety available that all have this huge range of colors. I think it's something crazy like 70 colors or 75 colors. Wild. I knew I wanted white. That's what I ordered. Although I was pleasantly surprised to see that it's not pure white, as you can tell this based on comparison to my tank top, which is pure white, because typically I can't wear pure white, although it's not so bad on a tank top. But I wanted to have a slight off-white color because I find that that looks better with my skin tone. And anyway, yes, I got the yarn close to the end of December, and I started working on that. It might have been before Christmas, actually, because Hobbii was quite fast. I was very surprised at how fast they were. Anyway, I started working on this, and I got perfect gauge with my swatch, and I started to knit it, realized it was bottom up. Was not thrilled about that, but I had already signed on to test knit it. I was committed, and then I ran into some problems. So first and foremost, there are a wide variety of pattern difficulties out there, and not every pattern is going to be written the same way, and not every pattern is going to have the same level of instruction as others. What I mean by that is sometimes you will come across a pattern that will detail every little instruction that you need to know because they are very beginner friendly, or they're very targeted towards beginners who are just learning and might not know all of the stitches and all of the acronyms and everything. So those ones are what I'm used to seeing and what I'm used to knitting. Even though I have progressed past beginner, I still enjoy knitting those patterns because I find it really relaxing to be told exactly what I'm doing. This pattern is a pattern that wants you to think more for yourself. And I did have a chat with the designer about this because you don't have to do, but you are encouraged to do waist shaping for this design. Now, what that means is she gives you instructions on the types of increases and the types of decreases that you can do to change the width of the body of your piece. But the pattern doesn't tell you which ones to use, or if you even need both, or if you only need to do increases, or if you only need to do decreases. And that really threw me for a loop because I've never come across a pattern like that before. And I've never knitted a pattern where there was so much left to my decision as the knitter making the pattern. And there is nothing wrong with that. It's just not what I've experienced before. And especially doing a test knit, I really felt like a fish out of water. So it took me some time to figure out what to do for my waist shaping. And what I ended up doing is, because the top is meant to be, that was another thing, like the length of the body was also up to you and up to your interpretation. And when you're doing bottom up, I really didn't like that. If it's top down, I have no problem with a pattern saying knit until X number of inches or centimeters or whatever the measurement is, or until a length that you feel comfortable with. That's fine with me. When it comes to a bottom-up sweater, I have a little more trouble because I have to then enter into my mind, okay, I want it to be a certain length, but when do I start doing my armhole shaping, and when do I start doing my neckline shaping? Like there's more things in play when it comes to doing bottom up, and then also being told that you need to decide how long you want the top to be. So that was one thing that I was already kind of like, oh, I don't know, like I'm already losing my balance kind of with this pattern. So I have to decide how long I want it to be, and then I'm being suggested to do waist shaping, but I need to figure out what I need to do for that waist shaping. I really should have given up then, I'm not gonna lie, because I didn't know what to do, and it did take me quite a while to have a think about this and to do some measurements, and I had to ask the designer for some instructions on, how do I decide what I'm doing for my waist shaping? Is it increases or is it decreases? And in the end, I came up with my own decision, and then I had to give that to the designer and say, look, this is what I chose to do, and this is why I chose to do it. Maybe provide some more feedback in the pattern and more instruction in the pattern about how the knitter should include waist shaping. So that was some feedback that I gave her from doing the body of the sweater. So I ended up only doing increases because my top was going to ideally hit at my waist, which is the narrowest part of my body. And I'm thinking as well, like if I'm going to wear this top other than my cosplay, I would wear it with high-waisted skirts. That would probably be the only thing that I would wear it with. So a crop style is fine because all of my skirts are high-waisted. And I thought to myself, okay, that's my narrowest part of my body. Everything above that is going to be larger than my waist. Okay, so that tells me right away I only need to do increases for my waist shaping. That got half of the problem solved. The other half was, okay, how many do I do? How do I figure that out? What do I do? So I measured my waist and I measured my bust at the fullest part. And I looked at the division between each measurement. And I think it ended up being, I want to say 4 inches, but it's been a while since I did those measurements. And it's been a while since I've done the waist shaping. And it's kind of been pushed out of my mind by now. Kind of because I just wanted to forget about it. But anyway, I figured out that I had, let's just say, I had 4 inches difference between the apex of my bust and my natural waist. So I did enough increases to make up that difference. So I ended up doing pretty much a whole gauge swatch in increasing of the size of the sweater. So I think it was like 20 stitches or something like that. And I did it over a period up the side of the sweater. In fact, if I take it off, I can show you. Here are my increases going up the side of the sweater. So I started them maybe about 2 inches above the 2-inch ribbed cuff or ribbed hem. And then I did them every so often until I got the higher number that I needed, which was about here. And then I did another 4-ish inches, and then I started doing my underarm shaping. I'm going to keep the blouse off from now on because it's going to be easier to show you some of the things that I want to show you. And also, I just feel so ick when I have this on, and I just cannot wait to get it off. It's one of those feelings. Anyway, moving on. I had to come up with my own waist shaping. And when I talked to the designer about that, and I said, like, this was something that I was struggling with quite a bit in the pattern, she did say that there could be more instruction, but she left it pretty open-ended because she was used to modifying patterns for herself. And yes, that's perfectly acceptable. That's all well and good. I really struggled with that because I am not a designer. And I'm not really good at knowing how to make a knitted garment fit me perfectly when it is such a complicated garment. When it comes to, for example, a top-down raglan sweater, I have a pretty good idea about how those need to fit me and what I need to do to make them fit me well. This was a bottom-up, quite fitted, intricate top with quite, fancy details. That's got a lot more to think about than a top-down raglan sweater. So I really struggled with the waist shaping, and wouldn't you know it, didn't quite work out. As you could tell, it does fit my waist and my bust. However, I do feel like it's still too short. Even meeting my natural waist, it wants to climb up. It wants to shrink up even more. And I do feel like that's because I maybe should have gone with a larger size. I chose a size that gave me neutral ease, and the pattern recommended neutral to negative ease. So I chose the neutral ease. And I honestly feel like I should have gone higher because even though I have blocked this is all blocked, by the way, even though I have blocked the ribbing and it does stretch out quite far, it still wants to come in and it still wants to shrink up, and it makes me so uncomfortable to wear it, which is unfortunate because it is beautiful, because I could have had a really cool hand knitted item to wear at a Comic-Con event, and it would have felt really, really special, but it was not to be. Moving up the blouse. So, like I said, the waist shaping didn't work out, but not just because of the fit of it around my belly and my bust. Myself, along with at least one other tester who I met through a separate Discord, we both had trouble with the fit of the top half of this blouse. And that, I think, is where this blouse really fell apart for me. One of the problems is that when you're doing your increases, you are increasing along your side seam. Well, there's no seam because it's in the round, but what you have marked off as faux side seams. And you're adding those stitches, in my case, because I did increases, to both the front and the back of the top. So that means when you get to your armholes and you are told to split where you have that center side marker, you're putting an even number of stitches on the back and the front. But your back is not as big as your front, especially if you're me. I am quite a busty lady, and I find that I need more fabric on the front than I do on the back. And with this design, because you have an equal number of stitches for the back and the front fits fine. Like it's fitted, which is what this blouse needed to be, but the back gaped. And if I have a picture, I'll put it in here. It might have been one of those pictures that I took late at night, hair up in a mess and no makeup on and everything. So it might not be one that I want to put in a video, but if I have one, I'll put it here. And the other person that I know who is test knitting a larger size than me had an even bigger gaping back. And we came back to the designer with our feedback, and I was able to fix mine by just going back a little ways and doing a few little fixes. The other person needed to go back all the way to the waist shaping and fix their waist shaping. Can you imagine how that would feel? Because it's a bottom-up sweater. If you have the entire torso done, including your side seams, your shoulder seams connected, and you have to go all the way back to here, 2 inches past your ribbed cuff, and do all this again, would not be me, man. Would not be me. So I was lucky in the sense that I could fix my fit issues with a few small tweaks that only required me to go back to shortly before the little bit of strap. That's another thing. You'll have noticed when I had it on me, it's very low. And it's low because you have to get a certain number of stitches for your straps, and you start with so many more when you are making a large size, and by the time you get up to where you have that small number that you need for the strap, because you need to do all of these decreases, you end up with a very long strap, and yeah, it just, it ended up being too short, like too low, and there really wasn't much that I could change about it because I needed that whole length to decrease those stitches. It could have been worse because originally we were told to block off, I forget how many stitches it was for the neckline, but that was the same number from the original range of sizes, the extra small to extra large. And before I started doing my 2 straps on the front, I put stitch markers in where those stitches were, and I took a picture to send to the designer, and I said, look, this doesn't look anything like yours. This looks too narrow. I think it should be out to here. And I put new stitch markers in to show her the difference, and she said, yes, that's good. Go with that. So I did go with the wider neckline. But even then, I still had quite a few decreases to do along the strap. And I feel like there should have been some compound decreases to make sure that you didn't have to do such a long strap so you didn't get such a low fitting garment. So after I connected the straps and I had a fully formed bodice, I wanted to do the ruffle hem across the front before I did a sleeve, because if things still weren't working out with this part of the sweater, I didn't want to move on to the sleeve, because if I needed to make any more adjustments to the length of the straps or the width or anything like that, I'd have to rip out my entire sleeve and go back. So I wanted to do that ruffle first. And I have to say the ruffle is one of my least favorite parts of this entire sweater. I think it did not work out for me at all. I don't know if it was caused by yarn. I don't know if it is just that's what this ruffle is going to do. I think the designer said that hers doesn't sit very flat either. But that is my problem with the ruffled neckline, is that it does not lay flat. When I have the top on, it just flips out like this, and it stands straight up, and it is so annoying, and it does not look right. Something that I feel would fix this, I was told by some friends to just tack it down with a few stitches here and there, but I feel like what would have also worked would be making it a little longer, especially for the larger sizes, because, you know, we got a little more space to fill. Like, we could have a longer ruffle, that's okay. But then also, I think it's because the body yarn is so much thicker than this ruffle, which is just, you know, one strand of mohair yarn. When you fold it over, some of that inside yarn also comes over. So I think there should have been a better way of picking up the stitches to allow for the ruffle to just sit straight like this and not have any of that inside yarn folding out as well. And I did try my best to block it that way. I just really pressed down on it when I was blocking it, but it still wants to curl outwards and show some of those purl stitches of the main body on the ruffle. And that annoys me. It really annoys me. It shouldn't be like that. But that's what happened. And then we get to the sleeves. So, the sleeves can be fixed. That is the one part of this entire project that can be fixed, because all I need to do is put in some elastic thread. The only thing was, I don't remember if the designer had this written in the pattern or not. So once I added the sleeves onto this top and tried it on, I found the biggest fit issue for me. And that was that the weight of the sleeves pulls the top off my shoulders. Now, I already have quite sloped shoulders, as you might be able to tell right here. My shoulders don't really stick up, and I do find it quite annoying that a lot of things slide off my shoulders. Like, you'll have noticed that my cardigan wanted to slide off too. Purse straps always slide off my shoulders. Holding a tote bag, the tote bag always falls off my shoulders. It's really, really annoying. So, you know, that could have been one reason why mine wanted to fall off. But I do think it was more so the weight of the sleeve wanted to pull this little shoulder off of my shoulder. So I reached out to a designer friend of mine just to kind of like talk through this, because we're friends, and I just was kind of like griping with her. It's like, oh, I just really don't like this. I don't want to work on it anymore. I'm so sick of it. And I was telling her some of my fit issues, and she said, you know, you could fix that collar and keep that strap up with a little bit of elastic thread around the neckline. So that is also something that I could do with this pattern. But at this point, I'm just done with this pattern. I'm so burnt out on it. I have been working on it for 3 months, and it's just one of those projects that the whole time that I've worked on it, it's been hard, and I'm just so tired of working on a project I don't really like And at this point, I definitely know I won't even wear. I will probably leave it in its current state, and maybe at some point I might feel like doing a bit of experimentation and add in those elastic threads and see if it can fix the shaping of pieces of the garment. Maybe I'll also tack down that ruffle. I don't know. I don't want to decide right now that I'm going to totally frog it and reuse the yarn because, I do have everything except one sleeve done. And maybe if I fixed some of the issues with some elastic thread, I might not feel so ick when I put it on. But the way that it currently is, I really hate putting this on. It really makes me not feel good about myself, and I just don't want to feel that way. So I'm done with it. I did reach out to the designer, and we both agreed that I could stop the test because I gave her a lot of feedback. I know it's something that I will not wear. I have been working on this for a long time, and it's time to just cut the thread. It's done. Also, the way I justified it to myself for quitting the test is also that the only thing I haven't done is the second sleeve, so I would have been giving her feedback on just a repetition of this. So I wasn't going to add any significant feedback by doing that second sleeve and by finishing the top. So that is it for my LRN blouse, a failed test knit. And it has kind of made me think more about the shapes of blouses and of tops that I want to knit and have knitted actually. And anytime I have tried to do a historical inspired piece or a vintage inspired piece, they never fit me properly. So I think I'm going to be way more selective of the vintage inspired pieces that I knit, and if I am going to knit them, I will wait for others to test it first, and then I'll decide if I want to do it or not. But there we have my failed test knit of the LRN blouse by Maiden Knitwear. It's sad, but I'm not upset about it. I feel just relieved and I feel free now that it's over, and I'm not really upset about wasting a bunch of time. I really do feel like I gave some very good feedback to the designer. It makes me a little more cautious of doing other patterns like that in the future, but that's okay. And I'm just ready to move on to some new things, and I'm excited to show you what some of those new things are in this whip section of the video. So my first whip that I have to show you is not even for me. I have been working on a sweater for Doyle. So back in early January, Hobie reached out to me. I am part of their partnership program, and asked me if I wanted to join in on their marketing campaign for upcycled alpaca blend yarn. So I'm going to show you a project that is sponsored because I received the yarn for free, so I will have that little sponsored banner on the video. But I was gifted this yarn to make something and to share it on Instagram, which if you do follow me on Instagram, you might have seen some of this content already. But I had decided to make something for Doyle because originally I was going to make something for myself, but when the yarn arrived, it wasn't the color that it looked online. It was a bit darker. And the color online would have been perfect for me, but the color that arrived was just a little too dark and didn't quite work for me, but it looked really nice on Doyle. So I also wanted to do something for him because this campaign is running over Valentine's Day, and I just thought it would be really sweet to knit him something. I've already knitted him a hoodie and a couple hats and stuff like that. But he's been wanting a cardigan, and I knew exactly which cardigan to make. I have been working on the Gigi Cardi by Knititude. Now, Knititude is one of my favorite designers, and this has got to be my favorite of her patterns. And I just think it's such a cool pattern. I love the way it's constructed. But first, let me see if I can put it on. I haven't quite split yet, but I'm getting close to the split, so it's going to be like a cape. So this is the start of Doyle's Gigi Cardi, and as you can tell, it has this really cozy folded shawl collar, which I am currently in the process of decreasing. So it is starting to get that really nice lapel shape. I'm down to about here for the sleeves. I think I only have like maybe 5 more rows to do and then I can split, which is very exciting. But I've been working on this one. I worked on it a little bit in early January just to like get it to a point where I would have something to show for my content that I had to create for Hobie. And then once I quit the test knit, I've been working on this one pretty much monogamously because I really love it and I love that I'm making it for Doyle. I really want to get it done for him. I don't want to stagnate on this project or let it fall to the wayside while I work on other things that I want to work on. So I have been focusing on this one a bit. It will be really nice once I split for sleeves and then I can, really crank out the rest of it. I don't think it'll take very long. Also, it was kind of nice to knit a size smaller than I normally would make for myself. So, it's going to be a little quicker, not a lot quicker, but a little quicker than I would normally do. So what I love about this sweater is the construction. You actually start by knitting the neck on its own, and then you pick up and start to do the top-down raglan shaping. And that means that you don't have to go back and add on the shawl collar and the button band after you've already done the whole piece. You're knitting it as you go. So I really love that. I also think it's just a fun way to start a project. It kind of feels like it's a quick start because I'm not starting off by having to I'm not starting off by casting on in the round and then having to set up all my markers and just constantly be paying attention to where I'm putting increases or doing short rows or anything like that. I'm literally starting by just like working on a rectangle of ribbing. And that just feels really nice. It just feels really calming and relaxing and get that yarn off me. I've pretty much been working on this one monogamously for the last week or two. When I was sick, I worked on a different project because I just couldn't concentrate on keeping anything straight other than just knitting and purling. So I'll show you what I worked on then in just a second. But once I got better and once I gave up on the test knit, I've kind of been working on this one as a comfort project because it's a pattern that I know well because I've already started it before. I did try and make it for myself a few years ago when I was a different size, and the size of the cardigan that I chose to make for myself didn't work out. I frogged it and then I just didn't come back to it for a while until now, but I always knew I wanted to make it for Doyle. I know I also want to make it for myself. I do have yarn to make it for myself. So eventually we'll have matching Gigi's. They'll just be in different colors. But yeah, this is one of my favorite patterns and I'm really enjoying making it for Doyle and working on something that you love. Even when you need to make content for a marketing campaign, it kind of makes the marketing campaign not so challenging because I do want to work on this and I do want to make progress on this because it is a project I'm excited to work on. So there's whip number 1. So while I was sick, I honestly did not have the brain space to work on anything that required paying attention to a pattern or even just crossing things off. I needed something super, super simple. And in fact, I didn't even knit the whole time I was sick. I am actually very impressed by people who post when they're sick and they say, oh, I'm going to lay in bed and get a bunch of knitting done. And I don't know how you do that because when I'm sick, my brain is a fog and I cannot tell up from down, left from right. I get a lot of TV and movie watching done when I'm sick. And sleeping. I do a lot of sleeping when I'm sick. And this time around, my husband and I were sick for over a week. We picked up some sort of a bug on my birthday. So at least we got to celebrate my birthday first. And then we got sick. And one of the days that we were sick, we just like had the fever and the chills and the body aches. And we literally slept the entire day. We went back and forth from the bed to the couch and the couch to the bed. And, you know, we had like some tea and some broth. But like, really? We spent the whole day sleeping. So like, for the most part, when I was sick, I didn't have the brain space to do any knitting, and some of the days I was just like, my body was too tired to even pick up needles. So did a lot of TV watching, did a lot of movie watching. But when I did do a bit of knitting, I worked on my care sweater, and I don't typically show this one very much in my podcast episodes right now because I have been saving it for my Liv's Rainbow Cal videos that I have been uploading because I'm doing it in support of this knit along that I'm running with Alex of Varied Rose, and I want people to kind of watch those videos because I'm donating the ad revenues from those videos to the Histio UK Foundation as part of my participation in the Cal. But I do quickly show it in my podcast episodes, and I have a feeling that the Cal will end before I finish this sweater, so who knows? Once the Cal is over, you'll probably see this sweater a lot more on the podcast. But this is what I worked on when I was sick, and I now have a front. The last time you saw this, it really was just the wedge of the back, but I now have the front done as well, and again, I think I'm only like 10 or 12 rows away from joining the front and the back in the round. And once I do that, I can finally add the blue. I'm so excited to get started on the colorwork pattern for this. But I just need to do those last few rows. So that was what I worked on when I was sick. So now I've shown you all of my whips. I still have one other whip, but it's my hat project that I work on anytime I'm in a social gathering, and you know, I just haven't done a lot of work on it. It pretty much looks exactly the same as it did last time. So maybe next podcast I'll have a bit more to show on you. I worked on it while I was getting my hair done today, but otherwise I'm not really working on it all that much, so it doesn't look that different. So not going to waste time showing it in the podcast. But I do have some fun plans to share with you. So this summer, Doyle and I are going to a friend's wedding, and I had been toying with the idea of knitting my outfit to wear. So once before I did consider knitting something to wear to a friend's wedding, and I ended up abandoning the project because it didn't work out. And at that time I wanted to try and like knit a whole dress. I am thinking a little more cautiously this time. I'm thinking of knitting a top. And the day that I decided to stop working on my Alaren blouse, I kind of just wanted to do something fun and relaxing, something with no strings attached, and, well, some strings attached because, you know, yarn. But I decided to do a bunch of swatches, and one of the swatches that I did was for a top that I want to make. So this is using Lion Brand Pima cotton in the color pewter, and I received this yarn as a prize. So I actually was gifted this yarn, technically. I won it in a giveaway. Alexi of Two of Wands did a series of posts last year or the year before. I think it was the year before, because she did it in 2020, and I think she also did it in 2021. But it was something about it was 2021 and 2022. And it was different prompts that you would then share knitted items that you had made that matched the prompt. And the one that I won the giveaway for was my Into the Woods sweater, which I know means that it was in 2022 that I won it, because I finished that sweater in January of 2022. And I think the contest ran in the spring of that year. So the prompt that I had posted that sweater for was something in your knitting that made you brave or courageous or something like that. And I shared the post with that sweater saying that I felt so brave making that sweater because it was the very first colorwork sweater that I'd ever made. And it ended up being one of my favorite pieces of knitwear that I've ever made. It is still one of my absolute favorites. And I ended up winning some yarn. I won 5 skeins of Pima cotton in the color of my choosing and 5 skeins of True Blue. And I didn't choose the best color for my skin tone of True Blue. I chose, I think the color was called Cameo, and it really was like a blushy salmon pink. And when it arrived and I held it next to my skin tone, it matched my skin tone. So I ended up not keeping that yarn because it did not look good on me at all. But I saved the pewter because I don't actually have a lot of cotton yarn in my stash. I'm not a cotton knitter too much because, you know, I'd only ever felt the really awful dishcloth cotton at Michael's. Like, that was my experience of cotton yarn. But this one is actually really nice and soft. I really like it. Pima cotton can also sometimes be really shiny. I have another Pima cotton that is by Cascade, and I actually don't like it because it's so shiny and slippery. This one I find is a really nice balance in between. It is 100% cotton. There's no other fiber in here, but I really like that this one is kind of a dull color. So I knitted it up as a swatch, and wouldn't you know it, I got perfect gauge on my very first swatch for the pattern that I'm going to make. I'm going to be making the Ballerina Wrap Top by Alexi of Two of Wands. The only downside is 5 skeins was not enough for my size. And this yarn is not easily accessible. I don't think it's discontinued, but it's difficult to get a hold of here in Canada. However, I did find it on Amazon. You know, I don't really support buying on Amazon, but you know, when you're trying to find some very difficult to attain yarn, beggars can't be choosers. So I did find a set of 3 on Amazon for $30 Canadian and free shipping. So that is plenty to make the top that I want. I did want to have the amount that the pattern specifies for my size, plus a little extra, because I'm going to be adding a little bit of crochet. I am a little nervous, but kind of excited to try adding some crochet to my top, because the Ballerina Wrap Top is pretty plain. It is just a stockinette wrapped cardigan. It has I-cord cuffs on the sleeves as well as along the edge of the wrap, because that ends up becoming the I-cord ties. But I wanted to make it a little fancier because I am going to hopefully wear this to my friend's wedding. And I thought it'd be really fun to add a little bit of crochet, because I think it was last year or the year before that Alexi did her resort collection, and one of the pieces was a crocheted wrap top, and there was some really beautiful crocheted edging on the sleeves, and I think she also did it either along the V or along the hem. I can't remember which one, but I'll include a photo here. If you're a crocheter and you can crochet, you might want to make this. But it is made using the lotus stitch, and I found a tutorial on YouTube of how to do the lotus stitch. And once I finish my ballerina wrap top, or even once I like split for sleeves and I have the sleeve cuff all done, I'm going to add some lotus stitches onto the edge and create this really nice floral edging on the top. And I think that will really zhuzh it up and make it look really, really pretty. At the moment, I'm planning on wearing it with a skirt that I have that has It's a off-white skirt with big roses with green leaves and vines on it. So I think it'll look really, really nice. My original plan was to wear the top with my green floral palazzo pants that I have. However, those are a really punchy green, and this is a really muted gray green. And I really didn't want to go down the path of over dyeing the yarn because I really do love this color for myself. I think it's a really great color for me. I love like earthy greens, like that's really something I love. And I didn't think that I would wear the punchy green as much. So I wanted to stick with something that makes me comfortable. And I think that this would look really, really nice with the skirt that I have in mind. So yay for that. So yeah, I am getting rid of some stash yarn, but I also had to buy some yarn to help me get rid of that stash yarn. So it's not as much as I already had, so it's not like I had to double what I already had, but it will help me get this yarn out of stash. I've been holding on to it for a little while, knowing I wanted to make some form of a top with it, and I'm very excited to do this top for my friend's wedding, and I think it's going to be a top that I'll get a lot of wear out of. It is in the back of my mind that I would like to make some summery knits because I don't have a lot of them, and I get a lot of wear out of the ones that I have already, so it'd be really nice to add this to my wardrobe. Speaking of my friend's wedding, I have also decided to knit our wedding gift for them. And I just happen to have 12 skeins of Wool Ease Thick and Quick, which is coincidentally the yarn that I learned to knit with in Marble, which I think is one of the best colors of this entire lineup. It might be one of my favorite Lion Brand colors of all time. Might even be one of my favorite yarn colors of all time. I just love the variation on this yarn. I think it's gorgeous. I think it looks really rich. It will also hide dust and dirt, which is good because I'm going to be knitting a blanket with this yarn. I have picked out, I think it's called the Mountain Throw. I probably got that wrong. I'm going to include a photo here as well as the name of the pattern and the designer. But it is a pattern I've had in my queue ever since I bought this yarn. I remember buying this yarn at a time when I was very, very nervous that it was going to go out of stock. I forget what made me think that. I think it's because it wasn't at Michael's anymore, and this had always been at Michael's. Like all of the Thick and Quicks had always been at Michael's. But for a time, my local Michael's didn't have any Lion Brand Thick and Quick, and I was terrified that this was going to go out of stock. So one time when I saw that the Lion Brand website was having a sale, I don't think it was a free shipping sale. I think it was a different type of sale. I think it might have been like a buy two, get one free or something like that. I bought 12 balls of this. I don't even think I need 12 for the throw, but I bought a bunch of it because shipping from Lion Brand to Canada is abysmal. I don't know why, but it's crazy expensive, especially compared to other mass yarn retailers. Like Knit Picks, brilliant for ordering to ship to Canada. First of all, if you spend $75, it's free shipping. Lion Brand, I think you need to spend $125 to get free shipping. So almost double. And then even if you do only spend less than $75 at Knit Picks, I think your shipping is only like $15 or something like that. So it's really affordable. Lion Brand, I think it's something like $30 or $35. It's wild. It's really wild. Anyway, I mass bought this when I thought it was going to be going out of stock and being discontinued because it's my favorite color yarn. And I thought to myself, I know I'll make something with that. I just want to buy a lot of it just in case I want to make a big project. Well, it's not discontinued. It's still around. I can still get it whenever I want from my local Michael's. I might as well use the yarn I have in stock and make that big project that I was thinking about. And I'm going to make this for our friends who are getting married in the summer because they're outdoorsy people. They also like to cozy at home with their dog, and I thought a throw would be something that they would find quite useful. It's going to be knit with large needles, so it's not going to be a super time-consuming knit. I would like to start it soon, so I'm not working on it in the heat of the summer because it's going to be quite big. But I thought it'd just be a really nice gift. Had this in stock, knew it would be up their alley. Their house is pretty neutral, so this would go really nicely in their house. I think their dog would really love it too, so I'm going to knit a blanket. I have knit blankets before. I've knit 2 blankets actually. And luckily this is a thick yarn, so it won't take too long. I'll probably get working on this soon. I'm probably going to be working on this one in tandem with the top that I'm going to wear to the wedding. But I think I would like to get started on this really soon. This will be an at-home project though, because it's going to be so big. It's not exactly portable to bring back and forth to work, but yeah, I'm really excited. I'm going to be knitting a blanket. It's funny that I just talked about knitting a blanket for friends of ours, because the yarn that I'm going to share for you in my stash spotlight, I'm actually going to be knitting a blanket with it. I did not plan that, to talk about all those things back to back, but I am sharing some commercial yarn with you today, and I'm sharing some commercial acrylic yarn with you today. So I am one of those knitters that I believe every fiber has a place, and there is a reason to use every type of fiber, including acrylic. I do not snub my nose at acrylic. I have been tempted many a time by an acrylic yarn at Michael's, and that's where these are from. Some of them I bought a couple years ago. One of them I bought more recently, but I have been inspired by these yarns because of the color. So I think it was maybe a week or 2 ago, Alicia Plummer shared a photo of one of her most recent knits, and I really loved the gradation of color along the sweater. It kind of changed in between like a sandy beige color and like a brown color, and it kind of like did a fade from one color to the other and then faded back, and I really loved that look. And it reminded me of some yarn that I had in my stash, which I absolutely love. I've had this yarn for a few years. This is Swirl Shawl by Loops and Threads, and I have it in 2 different colors. This one is called Almond, and this one is called Lavender. So I have an almond and a lavender. I have 2 balls of the lavender, and it did almost leave my stash more than once because I've put it in my bag to donate and then I've taken it out again, because every time I look at it, I'm inspired by it. I want to find out I want to figure out how I want to use it. And I tried to swatch for it for a pattern last year or maybe the year before, and it didn't work for the gauge that I had in mind. So this one sits in my stash waiting for the perfect pattern. And, that's one of the so-called excuses for having yarn in your stash is you're waiting for the perfect pattern. This is one of those times. But this one, I know what I want to make with it. I love the blend of neutrals and pastels in this yarn. I just think it's gorgeous. But these are also colors that match our living room. So our living room is painted like a seafoamy green, really similar to this, maybe like a shade darker, but it is almost identical. And we used to have a beige furniture set. Now we have like a toffee colored one, and I would like to bring more brightness into it. So a blanket this color would be so nice. Now we have 3 cats and a dog, and we can't leave our blankets out because our dog likes to chew them. In fact, he destroyed a hand knit blanket that I made a couple years ago. I made the blanket many years ago, but he chewed it up like 2 years ago. And I remember being so gutted because it was such a cozy blanket. It wasn't even anything special. It was a beige blanket that was just knit using like chenille yarn or something like that. It wasn't anything special, but it always felt so cozy and cuddly. It was almost like a teddy bear texture. So I was kind of gutted when he destroyed that blanket, but oh well. I can't do anything about it now that he chewed it. But I have been wanting to knit another blanket. And the one that I want to knit using this yarn is by Lion Brand. It's a free pattern. I think it's called the Zigzag Throw. And I really wanted to do a zigzag blanket because, first of all, I love the shape of the blanket. I love the zigzag edge. I think that'd be so fun. But also, this is a striping yarn, or it's a fading yarn. And how cool would it look to have that fade be in a zigzag shape? So I'm very, very excited to eventually knit with this. I just need to find the time to knit that blanket. But like I already talked to you about, I can't knit this blanket yet because I need to knit my friend's wedding blanket first. So maybe that will give me the blanket bug and make me want to knit this blanket for ourselves. But I'm going to get going on that blanket first. But these inspired me so much. And after seeing Alicia Plummer's post and then looking at these yarns in my stash, I was inspired to bring one more into the stash. So I knew I wanted to use this for a blanket for our living room because it's our living room colors. But I also really love it for clothing for myself. So I found one similar. So the thing about loops and threads yarns is that you will see them once and then they will never come back. I don't even think Loops and Threads have a website that you can actually look at, which is very annoying. And a lot of their yarns are one-offs that are specialty yarns that are never available again. So if you see it and you like it, buy more than you need. Case in point, I have 4 of these, which are enough for a blanket, so I know exactly what I'm making with them. I only have 2 of these, which is enough to do a short sleeve top if I hold them double. And if I want a long sleeve top, I have to make concessions. And that's, I think, why this one has sort of sat in the stash and gone from pattern idea to pattern idea. And I have never solidified on one. So that's why. They are hefty balls. This is 524 yards and it is a fingering or sport weight. I think it's closer to a sport weight. But like, that's a lot of yarn, even for a plus size person. So, I could figure out something to make with them, but I have not chosen the right pattern for them yet. I learned my lesson with this one that I got. This is Loops and Threads Ombre Hues. Now this is a polyester yarn and it is a 3-color ombre yarn. And this one is, I think it's sky blue, blush, and mint. And I just loved the colors. They just felt so calming. Actually, I was looking at this one online, and this yarn rather, and I had chosen a different color, and I thought about purchasing it online, but then I thought, no, I'm not quite sure. I want to wait. And then I went to the store, and I'm so glad I waited because the color that I thought I liked online wasn't as good in person. It was a little too punchy, but also spotted. It just wasn't properly saturated on the yarn. I didn't quite like the look of it on the yarn. Versus this one, because they're pastel colors, they blend so nicely together. And I really loved the blues and the seafoamy green and that little bit of blush as well. And those are all colors that look really nice with my skin tone. So that's what I have purchased, and I purchased enough to make a sweater. I purchased 4 of them, and they are 426 yards, and they are technically a DK weight. They're quite a thin DK, but I would happily say that that's a DK. So I don't know yet what sweater I will do. I'm probably just going to do a basic top-down crew neck sweater. I think I want to do Bibliophile 2 by Alicia Plummer because I have that pattern in my stash already and I really love the classic like sweatshirt style to it. So I think that's what I'm going to make with it. And also I kind of like that it harkens back to the reason why I bought it in the first place was being inspired by a photo that Alicia Plummer shared. So that's probably what I'm going to make with this. But obviously it's a newer yarn that I bought, so it kind of like drops below other ones that I have that I would like to work with first. What I've done this year to kind of like help me work through my stash, obviously I don't do yarn bands or anything like that. I just don't think that's mentally healthy, for myself at least. What I have done instead is I have put aside a lot of my favorite yarns that are inspiring me right now, all in one drawer. So when I want to work with a yarn, I go to that drawer, open it up, and I see what ones are inspiring me. And I had the pewter yarn, the Lion Brown Pima Cotton. I had that one in the drawer because that was one of the ones inspiring me. And I'm about to work on a pattern with it. So my system is working. However, I don't know if you've noticed this, but all of my favorite indie dyers are all coming out with gorgeous collections right now, and it feels like I don't even get a chance to breathe before another one shows off some more yarn. There's a lot of really beautiful yarn collections coming out, and it's really hard to say no. I think the problem with not that there's like a problem, but like a problem that I have with indie dyed yarn is that it's the forced scarcity of it. It's only going to be available once and it's never going to be available again after that. So I kind of feel like I need to get it at that time. And especially if it's a yarn dyed based on something that I'm really interested in, such as Taylor Swift, Stardew Valley, Sarah J. Maas. There's a lot of Sarah J. Maas ones coming out right now, expectedly. And you feel so much more connected to the colors of the yarn when you know it's referencing this moment or this item or this thing that you love. So it gets really hard to say no, but I'm trying to limit myself. I have made quite a few yarn purchases in January, and I want to try and work through my stash, because I don't like feeling overwhelmed by the size of my stash. I don't feel really overwhelmed right now. I just feel a tiny bit overwhelmed, especially because I have plans to bring more in, but I'm not working really fast to get things out. Not that you have to work fast to get things out, and not that you have to always have something going out before you can have something going in. That's entirely your choice. And I really don't feel that I have to have things going out in order to have things coming in, but I kind of want to work more on getting things out. So I do kind of want to curb my buying a little bit, but I'm not creating barriers for myself, if you know what I mean. Just because I don't think that's mentally healthy for myself. It works for other people, it just doesn't work for me. There's your little discussion from me about my yarn stash. And now for some book reviews. Now, I have been talking for quite a while in this video, so I'm not going to do a deep dive into all of the books that I'm going to be sharing in my book reviews, but you know I'm going to do a deep dive on one of them, so we're going to save that one for the end. But I have 3 that I want to share with you today. I have 2 that I have the physical books with me, and then the third one was a library book, but I'll just put a picture on the screen of it. The first book I'm going to share with you is The Bear and the Nightingale. This was one of the books that Doyle got me for our year of books that we did in 2023. And it's one that I think was recommended by my best friend to him to buy for me. And she read the first one. She really liked it. She hasn't read the second or the third one yet. I tried to read the second one. We'll get to it when I get to it. But I did read the first one all the way through. And to me, this was just a meh book. Everyone has their own reading preferences. And I know a lot of people told me when I shared that I read this book that they absolutely loved this series. It was one of their favorite series they've ever read. I struggled to get through the first book, and I gave up on the second one because of one key issue for me. These books are slow. They are so slow-paced. So if you don't like slow-paced books, it's not going to work for you. That was the biggest problem for me, is that I need a book to actually keep the action going, keep things going, and this one did not. I really did love the idea of it. I love the Russian fairy tale aspect of it. I did really love the main character, what was her? Vasilisia. But I didn't like that every character had 3 different names that they were called. I understand it is a storytelling aspect and it is a part of Russian culture, but it was really confusing reading this book and seeing every character had like 3 different names. So that really took me out of the story, and it made me have to concentrate a lot harder to read the books. But the main character, Vasilisia or Vazia, I think she's more often called Vazia in the book. I really liked her character, and I really liked the character of the Frost King. Oh gosh, what was his name? I think it's pronounced Morozko. If I pronounce it incorrectly, I highly apologize. But anyway, those are my 2 favorite characters in the book, and I really wish there had been more of the development between the 2 of them. I hear that there is more in the second and the third book, but I found out from other people who had read the series that all 3 of the books are very slow going. I did not have it in me to read 2 more books just as slow as this one. So that was The Bear and the Nightingale. The second book that I read recently was another very meh book. It was called One Night on the Island. And I'll put a picture here because I read that one from the library and I don't have the copy anymore because I returned it to the library. This was a book that the premise of it sounded so good. The premise was a journalist who writes articles about searching for love goes to a small cabin on an island off the coast of Ireland, super remote, no connection to the outside world, to have a solo self-love holiday. And when she gets there, there is a man already staying in the cabin because wires got crossed in the booking of the cabin. And neither of them can leave because this island has a boat that comes 1 time a week. And they're stuck there. And I loved that concept. I thought it was going to be so good because one of my favorite romance tropes is the one bed at the inn trope, where the main characters have to share a bed because there's only one bed. But this book didn't do it well. And it really was just a boring story. I really didn't care much for either of the characters. I didn't think either of them were really good people. And I didn't really understand how it was going to work because the main male character was still married. Like, he was separated, but he was still married. He had sons. I didn't understand how they were going to get together. And that's probably what kept the spice quite low, is because they didn't actually get together until pretty later in the book. And honestly, the sex scenes were boring. I didn't like them very much. It was very much like cut to black style, and it's like, but where? Give me more. And I think I would have quit that book were it not for the fact that there was a knitting guild on the island, and the main character joins this knitting guild, and there are all kinds of scenes of this knitting group, and it was just such a joy to read those characters. So the side characters killed it. The main characters flopped. The book itself was boring. I actually just sped read through the second half, not even actually reading it, just kind of flipping and reading a sentence on a page as I went through. It was just so dull. Couldn't stand it. So I just kind of gave that book a meh rating. So that was my second book that I read. And now the moment you've all been waiting for since you clicked on the thumbnail of this video. We're doing it. We're going into the House of Flame and Shadow. Now, full warning, there will be spoilers ahead. So if you do not want to be spoiled for this book, and usually I do spoiler-free reviews, but this was a case where I gotta tell you what happened because I hated this book. And I mean, I hated this book. And I need to tell you those spoilers in order to tell you why I hated this book. So if you do not want any spoilers, thank you so much for joining me for this video. Come back and listen to my review once you have read this book if you didn't want to be spoiled. So, for those of you who do want to be spoiled or who have already read this book and you're ready for the juice, let's get into this. Okay. House of Flame and Shadow, Crescent City, number 3. First of all, let me start off by saying I have never liked the Crescent City series. So that might be a predisposition for not liking this book. However, I read them because they are still written by Sarah Maas, and I do love ACOTAR and Throne of Glass. I have read both of them all the way through, absolutely adore them. And I felt conned into reading this book because of the events at the end of Crescent City 2. Now, we're here for spoilers, right? Crescent City 2, on the very last 5 pages of the entire book, Bryce ends up in Prythian and meets Rysand and all of the other characters. And it was like a holy crap moment. Like, what just happened? Oh my god, the Mossverse is real. People can change worlds. Okay. It was a lot. It was a lot when I read it. And then we had to wait a year for this book to come out. And I knew I did not like this series. I knew I did not like these characters. I did not like the world. None of it. But I bought my copy because there was going to be Prythian. And there wasn't enough Prythian. This is going to be a very emotional review. I do apologize about that. So I felt conned into buying this book because Sarah Maas laid the breadcrumb trail that there was going to be a crossover between the different worlds and that there was going to be a lot of content with all of our favorite ACOTAR characters. That only lasts until like chapter 25. And in between the chapters of Bryce going through Prythian, which I'll get into in a second, there are all of these scenes of Hunt, Rune, and Baxian being tortured in the Asteri dungeons. And it is pretty graphic torture. There is one scene involving a hand, which if you know, you know, but I'm not getting into because I did not read those pages. I skipped right past them because it was so disgusting and so gross and so awful. And the bits of Bryce in Prythian did not make up for that. Also, none of the characters of Prythian acted like themselves, in my opinion. Nesta and Azriel being talkative to Bryce? What? That is so not how they act. It was so weird. I also felt like Bryce is the worst character ever. She's the worst Moss character ever. She is also the worst protagonist to have because she is a toddler. She acts like a toddler. There's this whole scene where after going through the paths of the dungeon, I guess, I don't know, it's like she's taking some route that is given to her by the star in her chest that's telling her where to go based on it acting like a flashlight. She ends up in a catacomb under the prison in Prythian. And they find an Asteri that is in a crypt of some kind. And it's not dead. It's asleep in this like quartz sarcophagus. And Azriel and Nesta are like, don't do it, don't do it, don't do it, don't open it, don't talk to her, don't do anything. And Bryce is like, I'm going to do it. I'm going to open the sarcophagus because I need to talk to her and get answers. Oh my, I legit cannot stand Bryce. I don't think she's a good character at all. Anyway, after that, after Bryce releases the Asteri, and thankfully they somehow manage to kill her, Bryce is like, peace out, going back to Midgard, and I'm going to solve my problems there. Good luck with your problems here in Prithian. Oh my gosh. I just don't get it. I don't get her. I just can't stand her. I really hate this book. I hate the characters. I hate the world. I hate the plot. I hate the graphic violence. I hate the characters that nobody even cares about and forgot about, and yet they're getting all this screen time, or page time really. Like Ethan, who cares? I don't care about him. Didn't care about him before. Don't care about him now. Don't care about Therian. I think that he was definitely a character that went way downhill in this book. He was so much better in the House of Sky and Breath, the second book. All of the main characters tanked. Also, we were led to believe in House of Sky and Breath that Lydia is an awful, terrible, worst of the worst character. In this book, well, actually, technically, at the end of the second book, you learn that she's technically a secret agent for the good side. But you have set us up to hate this character. Now you're telling us we have to be sympathetic towards this character? I can't. You told me to hate her for an entire book. Now you're telling me I don't have to hate her and I should feel sorry for her? I don't. Because you told me to hate her. So that was another problem for me, is that like I'm not going to care about this character, but you're giving me so much information about this character. Don't care about her. And then the worst was Hunt and Bryce. Once they finally got back together, they had zero chemistry. Like, these are supposedly fated mates. They're acting like high school teenagers who are on a break, but they haven't told each other that they're on a break. It's so awkward. And I gave up on chapter 46. It is literally halfway through the book. So they haven't gotten to Avalon yet, but they're on their way there. And I looked up spoilers for this. And I listened to other people that have read this book, and I heard it does not get better. And one of the things that is absolutely abysmal about this book is that the sex scenes, which haven't happened yet, halfway through, they are just cringe. So I'm very glad I haven't gotten to them yet and will not get to them because I decided to quit this book. I'm done. I am not going to read it. I'm done with this series. I think this series, it was never going to be my favorite anyway, but I just really never liked it. And next year we're supposed to be getting an ACOTAR book. I hope we do. I hope it's good. I'm very worried it's going to be trash because I'm finding that these books were not the same quality as her earlier books. I said what I said. So that is my review of House of Flame and Shadow. I hated it. I hated every bit of it. And I gave up because I was just, for the past few weeks, I was getting over being sick, reading a book that I hated, working on a project that was making me miserable. I had to cut them. I had to get back to what made me happy. And even though this is my favorite author, it is not a book that I enjoy. and I had to stop reading it. So there is my review of House of Flame and Shadow. If you have survived this long into my video, thank you so much, because this was a long video and I feel like I was very emotional for some parts of this video. I had a lot of opinions to share. Hopefully I have been able to sort of like edit them down to be more succinct and actually represent what I'm thinking and feeling. If not, enjoy the babbling. If you're new here, thank you so much for joining me. And if you're a returning viewer, thank you so much for coming back. I really appreciate it. While you're here, it would help my channel if you could like this video, subscribe to my channel, and ring that bell icon to be notified when I release new videos. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you all take care and happy knitting!